morning. Really happy to be here. Kayrros is an environmental intelligence company that we created 6.5 years ago. We were formed in early 2016, just in the wake of the Paris Climate Conference, COP21, when the Paris Climate Agreement was signed. And we were struck at the time that countries were ready to commit to climate abatement strategies and goals, but didn't have the means to do that, to deliver, to implement their agreement, because they were lacking the metrics, the measurements, the data to guide climate action. So we set out to tap new sources of technology, new sources of information, to produce the kind of data that we felt was indispensable to achieve meaningful climate abatement targets, to deliver on climate goals. And today we have a fairly significant menu of products which fall in basically three main categories. One of the categories is climate impact. That is the measurement of the climate footprint of economic activity. We measure essentially emissions, including methane and carbon, CO2, and we measure in real time, using mostly satellite imaging, carbon sequestration through nature-based solutions, through basically forestry assets. We also measure climate risks, which is the risk exposure to extreme weather events like flooding or wildfires. And I'll get into that in a bit more detail in a second. And finally, we keep track of the energy transition itself, and we address transition risks. And that is essentially monitoring the deployment of new sources of energy, such as solar and wind, as well as the minerals needed for the electric transformation. We also measure incumbent fuels, which still are needed even in a deep decarbonization scenario, and which are very much needed to help integrate intermittent and variant renewable fuels. So we measure inventory, supply, demand, transportation of oil, gas, and coal as well. To do this, we essentially harness the power of artificial intelligence, machine learning, to tap into the tsunami of raw data provided by the proliferation of satellites, Earth observation instruments, as well as data from geolocation devices, social media posts, the Internet of Things, and so on. The list is open. And we deliver our results through a central platform, which can be used to address various verticals and various types of data, but also through other channels like API delivery or just spreadsheets and so on. So our customers are pretty varied. There's many use cases for our data. Some of those use cases are very new because the data are new. We measure things that could never be measured before. And the list of use cases is growing, and so is the list of customers. Today, we have customers that include financial institutions, that is banks, lenders, but also investors, hedge funds, investment funds, retirement funds. We have all the major energy companies among our customers, as well as the major trading houses. We also include governments, policymakers, regulators, regulatory agencies, multilateral organizations. We do have media groups among our customers. For example, Bloomberg News uses our methane data to generate dozens of stories about super emitter events for which they have received various awards. And we deal very much with academic institutions. Science is key to what we do. We partner with scientific organizations around the world, in France, but also in Europe and elsewhere. And we, in turn, put some of our data in open access for scientists to work on, to support the advancements of science, and also to raise awareness and bring more literacy, climate literacy, to the public at large. We feel that today the world is at a turning point. Climate policy is really on the cusp of delivering. The Inflation Reduction Act in the US is a landmark in terms of climate regulations, climate policy. In Europe, the green plan of the EU is very significant, as well as the methane strategy in particular. But also in other countries, including China, policies is starting to have an impact and to be meaningful. Policymakers have been making explicit reference to what we do. President Macron of France has quoted us in his speeches on the EU climate strategy, for example. We've been invited in the Élysée panels for discussions about European and French climate strategy. Kayrros Simpson, the EU Energy Commissioner, has tweeted our map of methane emissions and has referenced us very explicitly in unveiling the methane strategy of the EU and other policies. John Kerry has made reference to our map of Russian super emitters when he introduced the Global Methane Pledge at Glasgow back in 2021, and again has made reference to the need, to the role of data in climate policy just a couple of weeks ago at Sharm el-Sheikh, where we're present as well. So some of our products include the Methane Watch, which is a platform to detect super emitters of methane in real time around the world. This is the first platform that does that. We systematically scout through the data produced daily by Sentinel-5P of the Copernicus constellation of the European Space Agency. And we run the data through our algorithms. We occasionally couple those data with input from other sensors, Sentinel-2, Landsat-8, and others. And we basically, every single day, identify the huge methane emission events around the world. Methane is, of course, equal to carbon dioxide as an agent of global warming in the next few years. It has 80 times plus the global warming power of carbon in the first 20 years after its release in the atmosphere. So abating methane is key to climate action. We cannot achieve the climate goals without doing this. And eradicating super emitters, this is the low-hanging fruit for climate action. And this is what our platform makes possible. We also measure methane emissions at the basin level, including not just super emitters, but all sorts of emissions from the energy sector, as well as other sectors of activity. We also measure carbon dioxide. So we have a platform that tracks carbon emissions, also in real time on a daily basis. This is key to help the carbon market grow. And we, for example, in the EU, we are able to assess in real time demand for carbon credits by tracking emissions from all the regulated sectors in the EU. Transportation, both ground and aviation, as well as electricity generation and industry from high-emitting sectors like cement and steel. This is something we do in the EU. We also do it in the US, in China, as well as now Japan and India, and we're starting to apply this capacity to other geographies as well. In terms of climate risks, as I mentioned, we monitor in real time the exposure of geographies to climate risks, including wildfires and flooding. And we do this using an algorithm and a model that combines more than 20 indicators to assess very precisely the risk of extreme weather events. Once an event happens, this platform can monitor the event in real time and can also assess the damages with a lot of granularity, again in real time, which is very useful for parametric insurance and for assessing premia for insurance companies and so on. Greenwashing is one of the key challenges of climate action, and there's been a few scandals in the carbon asset industry, exposing green carbon projects that were deemed to be worthless. Our technology monitors forestry assets as well. We monitor the height of the canopy, the diversity of species, the density of foliage, and the exact carbon content embedded in forestry assets, again in real time, in a non-intrusive way. And this helps developers extract more value from their projects. This reduces the huge risk that currently exists in climate assets, and that can really help jumpstart the development of nature-based solutions as a way to reach the climate goals. Finally, monitoring the climate risk is a key issue, the transition risks. We assess the development of solar farms in real time. This is something that's very opaque, that was very opaque until now. Many projects announced, for example, by ERCOT, the state regulator in Texas in the US, are way behind schedule.
Thank you, Antoine. We have to stop it there.
Right.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you.
Okay.
Please give him a round of applause. Thank you very much.